the president has repeatedly inflamed tensions, espoused hateful rhetoric, and intensified attacks on Minnesotans, especially the Somali community. ICE's increasingly violent actions have terrorized our state. Demanding accountability is not radical. Calling for systematic reforms are not extreme. Our caucus members will oppose all funding for immigration enforcement in any appropriation bills until meaningful reforms are enacted to end militarized policing practices. ICE has no place in terrorizing Minneapolis or any American community. Thank you all for being here. As the Deputy Chair of the Progressive Caucus, I am grateful to have our members united to ensure the Department of Homeland Security faces accountability. Last week, the nation watched an ICE agent shoot a Minnesota resident in broad daylight. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. I am beyond heartbroken and outraged that the Trump administration's actions led to Renee Nicole Good's murder. Her final words before being shot were calm and non-threatening. She said, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." Those are the words of someone attempting to de-escalate, not someone posing a lethal threat. After the shots were fired, the agent is heard saying, "This did not happen in isolation. This was not an accident, and it was certainly not inevitable. This killing is the direct consequence of deliberate choices made by Donald Trump and his administration. Over the last few months, the president has repeatedly inflamed tensions, espoused hateful rhetoric, and intensified attacks on Minnesotans, especially the Somali community. ICE's increasingly violent actions have terrorized our state and culminated in this needless loss of life. This is what happens when you give people with guns impunity. Dangerous things take place. To be clear, demanding accountability is not radical. Calling for systematic reforms are not extreme. This is the bare minimum required to restore safety and justice back to our communities. The American people deserve answers and accountability. They deserve to live without fear of federal agents acting as judge, jury, and executioner in our streets. And so today, I am glad to announce that the Congressional Progressive Caucus has adopted an official position to hold ICE accountable. Our caucus members will oppose all funding for immigration enforcement in any appropriation bills until meaningful reforms are enacted to end militarized policing practices. We cannot and we should not continue to fund agencies that operate with impunity, that escalate violence, and that undermine the very freedoms this country claims to uphold. ICE has no place in terrorizing Minneapolis or any American community. Together, we will stand united to ensure we put a check on the pattern of violence and lawlessness from this administration.
Thank you so much. I have a question for Representative Omar, if that's okay. A question that I have, if you are, how are you coordinating with state and local officials in Minnesota to support affected communities in Minneapolis and St. Paul amidst these tragic events happening?
I mean, we have our staff that is in the district doing the constant work of making sure our congressional delegation, obviously the Democratic congressional delegation from Minnesota, and our local communities are getting information that is necessary, but also taking that information and seeing ways in which we could be supportive. Thanks.
I understand we have Michael from the New York Times here. Yes, sir.
I wanted to ask, so you guys are talking about attaching meaningful reform to an appropriations bill, but as I'm sure you know, Secretary Noem, in a court filing on Saturday, suggested the sheer amount of money that was given to DHS during that reconciliation bill exempts them from an existing oversight requirement appropriations. So how do you contend with that as you're pushing for meaningful reform on a spending bill that she's already suggesting she has enough money to work around?
Okay, first of all, it's a BS argument, and hopefully the court is going to say that. Clearly, we have to spell things out even more than we have. But first of all, you can't make an argument that in that particular case of that detention, that federal facility, that is a federal building, as I understand it, Representative Omar, and you can't suddenly say that that was only funded by the one big bad betrayal bill. So it's not, we don't think we're in court around that. We don't think it's going to hold up. But what I would say is, why are Republicans refusing to have accountability for agents who go rogue? Why are they refusing to have an independent investigation into this? Why were they immediately out trying to classify what happened and lie about what happened and gaslight the American people who saw it with their own eyes? Because they don't want, and Kristi Noem herself, by the way, on CNN said, you can't trust the government. And Dana Bash said, you are the government. She said, I know, that's what I'm saying. So I don't think we can trust what they're saying right now, and it's an unfortunate thing, but I think we have to be aware that when we write the appropriations language, we're going to have to spell out even more clearly than we have what this applies to, and they can't try to draw this distinction between what was in the big bad betrayal bill and what's in appropriations. I don't think the court will see what the court does.
I also want to reiterate that two of the three shooting victims that have been in the news, the first one last summer at the end of June, Silverio Villegas, had just dropped his kids off from school. Same thing in Minneapolis. And the third one, the woman, my neighboring community, who was shot 5 times, Marimar, they also called her a domestic terrorist. The case fell apart. It was dismissed. They dropped the charges. They've used these labels on every single one of those instances, and that's reprehensible, unconscionable. Yes, sir.
Is just related to the DHS funding bill, but if there aren't any reforms to ICE or changes to ICE policy, should Democrats oppose the other funding bills to try to force Republicans to the negotiating table and try to get some policy concession?
We have our position on this bill. We want to deal with that. We're ready to engage, and we're ready to negotiate. We'll take them one at a time. Yes.
Several of you have referred to the shooting of Renee Good as murder. There hasn't been, a trial, a complete investigation. Are you perhaps prejudging, the possibility of getting a fair trial for the shooter or his rights to due process?
Could I ask you a follow-up question? Would you ask that of the president and Kristi Noem when immediately they called the victim a domestic terrorist? That's right. And then they're going to be the ones that are going to conduct the investigation and ice out Minnesota from doing it? The reality is, as you see more and more footage, it is clear for us there was an intent to kill. I just did an interview with BBC with a former ICE director under Donald Trump, and we talked about the number of shots. And he said, it doesn't matter the number of shots. He was trying to justify it. Yeah, the number of shots matter. There was an intent to kill. And then he went further and called her a fucking bitch. So I think we can go back and forth on that. What we are saying is we want to see an independent investigation. The public is demanding it. And for the sake of our own credibility as government officials, whether you're Republican or Democrat, that investigation has to happen, because that investigation has been denied for Silverio Villegas, Gonzalez, and others. And the time right now is now, and we have an appropriations process to hold them accountable with.
And I will just say that the very first person that made a determination about this case was Kristi Noem.
That's right.
And then Donald Trump.
That's right.
So I introduced an amendment today on a judiciary bill to call for an independent investigation into this, because this is what our Republican colleagues kept saying last week during a hearing. We need an independent investigation. While at the same time, they were backing up the fact that the very institution that should be calling for an independent investigation from the beginning. Imagine how different this would have been if Kristi Noem and Donald Trump had immediately said, this is horrific, a U.S. citizen was killed, we've seen the video, it is extremely disturbing to us, we are immediately launching, in conjunction with state and law enforcement officials, an independent investigation into what happened. This whole thing would have, so I would just, I agree with Representative Ramirez. Ask the White House this question, because they are the ones that started this from the very beginning. We went back and forth in Judiciary last week with our Republican colleagues who wanted to analyze it. Great, let's have an independent investigation. They don't want it. They all voted against it today.
In recent days, some Democrats, Mr. Espaillat among them, have been talking about the need to terminate ICE altogether and rebuild it somehow again. Is that a sentiment that you agree with, going beyond mere conditions for ICE?
Nick, let me start, and members can feel free to chime in. I had never used the term abolish ICE until the last round of pounding that my neighborhood took when Greg Bobino and company showed up to terrorize our community. You know why I did it? Because my 8-year-old grandson, who is adopted, is terrified. All he wants to talk about is ICE. And when we drive around the neighborhood, is that ICE? Is that ICE? Is that ICE? Because my wife is terrified. And I, too, was sickened by the choppers flying overhead. I don't know if it was intentional, constantly hovering over my home in Little Village, while the terror that ICE was bringing to my community was all over the commercial strip of our neighborhood, Chicago's second magnificent mile in terms of commercial retail activity. That's when I said, we can never go back to normal. People will never understand that ICE is an agency of the government, that it has legitimacy because of all the violence that they have perpetrated, all the terror that they have sowed, and all the disrespect that they have demonstrated against the people that I represent in Congress.